Okay, last video for chapter 1. In the last video that we just talked about, I had grouped our two sheets together so that I could show you how to change page settings like landscape orientation, margins, etc., and have it be done to both sheets. Now, I should have at the end of that video ungrouped the sheets, and I kind of forgot to do that, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. If you have the two sheets grouped, again, you can see group up in the title bar. All you have to do is right-click on the Sheet tab and pick Ungroup Sheets. And now they will be not grouped, and you can tell up on the title bar it no longer says Ungroup there. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you don't want to leave them grouped indefinitely. You want to make sure you're mindful of that. Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about header and footers. And the reason why I wanted to ungroup them is because I want to show you two different ways to do headers and footers. But if you had multiple sheets, it would actually make sense for you to have them all grouped. So when you went to go do the header, you wouldn't have to do it individually for each sheet. Okay. The only reason I'm doing them separate is because I do want to teach you two different methods. So the first method we're going to talk about is on the Insert tab, and over here in the text group. Okay, I'm going to click on text group, and I see where it says header and footer. And when I do this, you'll see my worksheet actually changes a little bit. It's actually made, if I go to view, it's actually brought me to what's called page layout view, okay? And this is just like Excel, where I can't edit both, just like Word, in that I can't edit both the sheet and the header at the same time. So when I'm up here in the header section, it actually is not going to allow me to make changes down here unless I click down there. So the header section is broken up into three different sections: left, center, and right. I'm going to click over here in the left section, and I'm going to type my name, okay? And it'd be helpful if I knew how to spell my name. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the center section. When you are in the header and footer area, so the header's at the top of the page, the footer's at the bottom of the page. We learned that when we were doing Word. The Header and Footer Tools Design tab becomes available. So I click on the Header and Footer Tools Design tab, and I see here that I have a few different header and footer elements that are sort of helpful for me to use. One, for example, is the current date. So maybe I want to have the date in my header. So if I pick current date, you notice what it does is it does a field code of ampersand bracket date bracket. Watch what happens when I click off here to the right-hand side. See how it brings in the current date? So by using that field code, it just goes out and grabs the current date, okay? It also has current time. And then the next one we're going to talk about is the file name. This is super helpful if you have a workbook that you don't use very often. Sometimes you forget what you called it. So by putting the file name on the header, it would allow you to search for it later on, 6 months down the line, right? You could also include the file path. The file path is the folder, the different folders that it's saved in. But watch what happens here. When I pick file name, it puts this ampersand bracket file bracket. And again, what that's going to do when I click off of it, I'm going to click back over here, is it goes out and it grabs the actual name of the file. So when they tell you to insert the file name in the header or the footer, please don't type the file name. Make sure you use the file element code, the file name element code, so that it will go out and get the code for you, okay? And it's okay when you click here that it shows ampersand file, because as soon as you click off it, it will show you the file name. All right, so now I'm going to go down to the footer by clicking on Go to Footer. It's going to bring me to the bottom page, and you can see here the footer is also broken up into left, center, and right, okay? So I'm going to click here in the center section. Actually, I'll go over to the left section for a second. And maybe I want to include the sheet name. Remember, the sheet name is whatever the name of the sheet is down here. So in this case, it's October. So I'm going to click Sheet Name, and I see ampersand bracket tab bracket. And again, when I click off, it'll show me the actual name of the sheet, not that code. Okay. Now I want to put a page number in. So I have the ability to do page number and number of pages. So page number is the current page you're on, and number of pages is the total number of pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do page number, space. I'm going to do the space, the word of, and, okay? So the effect here is, let's say it was 3 pages. I'd have page 1 of 3 pages. In this, our example here, we only have 1 page. So it's actually going to say 1 of 1, okay? And I could, if I wanted to, I could actually put the word page here. So I'll get page 1 of blank pages. So watch when I click here. So see page 1 of 1. And if it were 3 pages, it would say page 1 of 3, which is kind of a cool feature, right? Okay, so once you're done creating your header, what you're going to want to do is take it back out of this view. And so the best way to do that is if you click back into the worksheet, right, you can see your header and scroll up and you can see your footer, but we want to change our view back to normal view instead of page layout view. So I click on the view tab here and I go to normal, and that way I get it back the way that we're used to seeing it with just our row and column headings. And you can always go back to page layout view, right, to see it. And then another way to get to your header and footer is to simply click in it, right, sort of like we did with Word, okay? But the way I prefer that once you're done doing the header and footer is to go back and flip it back to normal, just because it's nicer to look at that way. All right, so now we're going to go over to the Formulas tab. And I just want to show you one other way that you can do header and footers, and that's by clicking on the Page Layout tab and going down to the Page Setup dialog box. And here you have a tab for header and footer. So instead of doing it within the worksheet itself, you're sort of building your own custom header and footer here. So I'm going to click on Custom Header. Well, notice first that there's a drop-down list of different things that you could pick from. And each one, so for example here, there's a comma, comma, comma. This would be the left section, the middle section, the right section, okay? I don't think the homework ever has you do that. Let's go over here to Custom Header, and here you see the left section, center section, and right section. And the same header and footer elements that you had up here are available here. This is page number, this is insert number of pages, this is date, this is time, this is your file path, this is your file name, this is your sheet name, etc., etc. So here in the left section, if I want to do the same thing, I could type in my name, and then in the center section, I believe we had the date, so I'm going to do the date. And then in the right section, we could put the file name. Okay, so this is all in the header, and I click OK. And now if I go down to the footer and I want to do a custom footer, I can do the same thing that we did for our other one. So let's say in the right section, I'm going to put the sheet name tab, and in the center section, maybe I want to do the same thing with the page, where I do page space, and again, this is page number space of space, and then the page total page numbers. So it's very similar to what we did on the other tab, which is why I did a little bit quicker here. But rather than doing it in the sheet itself, you're doing it in this little window. Now, there is one occasion on a homework assignment where when you go to try the other method, you actually can't get to your header and footer because there's not enough room. So this is the best way to do your header and footer in a case like that. And you can always format your header and footers, and that's where, like, if this was highlighted, I could click on Format Text, and it would allow me to set the font name, style, size, sort of basic, coloring and all of that. So you do have that ability where you can format your. Okay. Okay, so I think the important thing to note is that you just want to be mindful that you're not typing in like the file name or the sheet name, that you're using these elements so that it goes out and gets that name for you. So if the sheet name should change for whatever reason, by using the sheet tab element, that it will go out and get the newer name of the sheet. Whereas if you just typed it in, it would keep the old name. So you want to make sure when you're doing grader assignments or any kind of assignments, you're going to lose points if you don't do that correctly. Okay, so that I'll hit OK and hit OK again. And you'll see that when you go to do file print, right, you see your header and footers right there. Okay, and if you wanted to print both sheets at the same time, you would want to group them, and you hit file print, and then you would see both of them. You can print the whole workbook that way. Okay, and again, if you want to ungroup, you right click and you pick ungroup sheet, and you could just print that individual one by hitting file print, and it would see our header and footer here as well. Okay, so just in summary, 2 different ways that you could do a header and footer. One is on the insert tab via text. You could go to header and footer. The other is by going to the page layout tab, clicking on the dialog box or page setup, and using header and footer here, custom header, custom footer. So completely up to you which method you want to use. They both work the same. Well, actually, they work pretty differently, but the end result is the same. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. Good luck with the homework.